Hello, this is Michael Moore, and this is my podcast. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. It's the 4th of July weekend, and it's been, almost 10 days now since the great debate, the Trump-Biden debacle. And I was really gobsmacked right like in the first 10 seconds. I could not believe what I was witnessing, and then I stayed with it. If you were like me and watched the whole thing, it was pretty brutal. First of all, it's just brutal because Trump is standing there. You can't stand looking at him. You can't stand listening to him. And he's just a nonstop diarrhea of the mouth when it comes to just nonstop lying. And then there was Biden, everyone's favorite grandpa. And, well, this is going to be good. Two different people on this stage, that's for sure. And then it was just immediately right down into the rabbit hole. So I decided that night that I'm not going to knee-jerk here. I'm not going to get all twisted about what I just saw or what I think should happen. And I said to myself, you just need to take a good long breath, step back from it, and just see how you feel in the morning. And I said that to myself for a number of mornings because I wasn't ready to sort of figure out, I think I pretty much knew how I felt about it, but it was, how do I communicate this now to you, to others? And what do I do about it? Because I think I share a goal that all of you share, no matter how we feel about a whole bunch of issues or things, that goal is we must stop Donald Trump. He will not re-enter 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He will never step foot in the Oval Office again. Never. Period. And that's an okay goal to have because we know what the results of this are going to be if it goes the other way. So that part I didn't need to spend any time thinking about. But, as I've told you over a number of months since last October, of my utter disappointment seeing President Biden embracing Benjamin Netanyahu, funding him, arming him, and not ordering him to stop using our weapons and our money. Stop the slaughter, stop the ethnic cleansing, all that stuff. And he kept saying he was going to get a ceasefire, and he never did. Kept saying he was going to get humanitarian aid to 2 million people that were suffering in Gaza. Never did. One promise after another broken. And it was clear that he was the main enabler of Netanyahu and his so-called war cabinet. And suddenly there were 10,000 dead Palestinians, and then 20,000 dead, 30,000 dead, 40,000 dead, many of them, maybe the majority of them, children, old people. So, I've just had my spirits deflated by this person I voted for. And then the debate happened. So a couple of days ago, I finally sat down and just to get all my thoughts and feelings out onto paper, wrote this, and I want to read this to you. I've already sent it out as a written Substack to all of you who are subscribers. And for those of you who are also subscribers, but you like to listen to my podcast, this is my podcast for today. I'm recording this actually right after the interview that Biden gave George Stephanopoulos on ABC News Friday night. And from what I'm about to say, nothing has really changed. And it was actually, I probably got sadder because I saw the denial. And in spite of my criticisms of Biden and everything, I am very grateful for so many of the things that he's done in these last 3.5 years. And yet tonight, it's like he still didn't really have a clue as to what was going on, what was happening, and how dire the situation is for the country. And the goal of stopping Trump may not be achieved. I can't believe that's going to happen, but it very well could now. So I wanted to speak to you and share these thoughts with you. Some of you will feel similar. Some of you won't. Some of you will maybe be disappointed, but this isn't about who's our friend or who we have to be loyal to or did such a great job. And we don't owe him or anybody. We owe this country. We owe this country, us, ourselves, our eternal vigilance and our actions as citizens. Democracy, as I've said for, 30 years now, is not a spectator sport. It's a participatory event. It only exists when we participate. If we check out, if we don't express our thoughts and feelings, what we stand for, it ceases to be a democracy. And we won't have to worry about Trump ending the democracy or some terrorist from somewhere else. We become our own terrorists when we don't take the stands that we need to take, especially when it's uncomfortable, especially when maybe it's somebody we're grateful to or that we like or whatever, or somebody that we have a lot of criticisms about, but we know what the larger goal is here and what our responsibility is to the planet that we live on. So before I read to you what I've written here, let me just thank our underwriter for today's episode, Shopify. Shopify has been with us for some time, and here's how it works. Basically, if you have an idea to start your own shop, or perhaps you want to raise money for your nonprofit or your school or your high school band, whatever, check out Shopify. They are the global commerce platform that has helped millions of people just like you and me start up their own online shops. And then Shopify helps you grow and thrive with your endeavor. We've used Shopify before on this podcast, and I'd use them again. They've got so many tools available to help with every part of running a business, from setup to marketing to customer service to various data and insights, plus extensive help resources if you need a little extra support along the way. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/rumble. And rumble is in small letters, RUMBLE, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/rumble now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/rumble. And thank you, Shopify, for supporting this podcast and for supporting my voice. So here we go. We are asking the wrong question about Joe Biden on this 4th of July weekend. I just want to start by paraphrasing to you an old Richard Pryor joke. It's a riff on an original line from Chico Marx, one of the Marx brothers, but Pryor spiced it up a little bit. He said, "Who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes?" Well, since the presidential debate over a week ago, the leaders of the Democratic Party have been in full five-alarm fire mode, wanting us to believe that we did not see what we saw. How have they described what happened on debate night, the debacle? "Oh, it was just a cold. He had a bad cold. Everybody has an off night." Okay, so that wasn't his best performance. All presidents have one bad debate. You're not going to judge 52 years of public service by 90 minutes of a lousy debate, are you? He's 81. What do you expect? You'll be 81 someday. Let me tell you something about Joe Biden. He's not a quitter. He's all in. This is Scranton Joe we're talking about. Yeah, we've heard all the excuses, but it's all malarkey. That's probably because maybe we're asking the wrong question when we ask, what are we going to do about Joe? Maybe we should be asking, what are we going to do about ourselves? And what can we do to get him, Joe, some help? Perhaps we should start with a definition of terms. Like, why do people keep calling that thing we watched a debate? Was it really a debate if one of the debaters is mentally and physically incapacitated, that he cannot complete a sentence, that he randomly flips between discussing abortion, the 3 trimesters of a pregnancy, and how great his golf game is, Then, looking around, unable to find one of the 4 cameras pointing at him, he suddenly turns his head all the way to the left, as if he was looking for Rhode Island or something, staring off into the distance, and then out of nowhere, raises his voice and shouts, "We finally beat Medicare!" We finally beat Medicare? Not Ohio State, but Medicare. We saw and we heard all of that. And no matter what the party hacks keep telling us, it was heartbreaking. My friends, it was truly, without equivocation, unlike anything any of us had ever seen before. No matter where you stood or stand on the Joe Biden scale, from Joe, the working class hero, all the way to Joe, the banker of Palestinian ethnic cleansing, one thing was certain. This was not a cold. This was a human being in utter collapse. Not just political collapse or performance collapse, but rather a full frontal lobe meltdown, where at any moment you had to wonder, was it possible that the sweet and fragile existence we call life was about to short circuit, or worse, lose power? Lose power to Trump. And that no amount of shouting, "Stat!" or cutting quickly to a commercial break was going to restore the president patient to full capacity in order to save this even more fragile democracy. Do not mistake my criticisms of Biden spending 9 months in the loving embrace of Bibi Netanyahu as meaning that I do not deeply appreciate his 3 years of being the most progressive president of my lifetime. That's right, my friends. There really has been no other president, and we've had some good ones. But with this president, with Biden, I mean, if you just look at the record, there's been more action taken through executive orders and legislation to protect the environment, more government officials that he's appointed who are, in their heart of hearts, I'll say it, democratic socialists. That's right. Everything he did with unions, all the unions and all those union members who were backed by their president. Usually the president just kind of stays out of it when it's between the corporation and the unions. Not Biden. He went to Detroit and walked the picket line with the United Auto Workers. No president had ever done that. He's given more serious funding to lift millions out of poverty, more support for libraries, single mothers, and college students deep in debt. And he has had this fervent, almost religious zeal to fight greed and obscene profits. And that's because of the true compassion he has for those who've been dealt a bad hand in life. And he has done more of all of that than all the good presidents had, whether it be Kennedy, Obama, Carter, all of them, whatever they were able to muster, hasn't matched what Joe Biden has done. That's just the truth. Then he got us through COVID, the worst pandemic of the last century. Plus, what was his main job that he had to do? One job in 2020. Get rid of Trump. And he did that and gave Trump a humiliating defeat. And it doesn't mean that he hasn't had his failures. And yet, on balance, and remember, I worked for Bernie and was a Bernie supporter. But when Bernie wasn't the candidate, I locked down on our main job: remove Trump. None of that is feeling right now, is it? Has he had a stroke? will there be another one or a mini one or maybe a micro stroke? As you get older, you have these things while you're sleeping sometimes. It doesn't end your life. It rewires a few things. Maybe you're a little slower or something's drooping, but life goes on. But sadly, the decline begins. And it's hard to reverse that decline. But one thing about getting older, and I can now, I guess, say this, it doesn't get better. You can deal with it just fine, but you have to just sometimes accept that, okay, well, I can't do now at this age what I did at 35. That's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be, actually. It'd be a little weird if it wasn't. But I don't think we should be waiting until September, October to deal with this. I think we have to deal with this right now. And this is not about whether he's fit to serve another 4 years. After what we saw on debate night, this is about whether he should serve another 4 days in the toughest job in the world. That's the question we should be asking. Or let me ask you this. If Joe Biden offered to drive you from Flint to Detroit tonight, would you get in the car? I'm not saying people in their 80s can't drive. A lot of them drive. My dad drove till he was 90. It's not that. It's not really about the age. It is about the capacity to function at a level that if you're the leader of the world's only superpower, how on it you have to be. In George Stephanopoulos' interview with him Friday night, he asked President Biden if he would be willing to let a neurologist check him out, to take a cognitive test, to do. And he interrupted and he said, no, I don't need any of that. I get a cognitive test every day, Biden says. He didn't mean that he actually gets a cognitive test every day. He's saying that when you're president of the United States, that is a cognitive test. You're put through it every day. But that's not the question. The question is, something is wrong. We all saw it. And would you please just be willing to have an independent doctor, not one at the Army hospital in Washington? You're the commander-in-chief. That means that doctor works for you. You're the boss. Not him, not her. This has to be an independent neurologist who's going to check you out. George asked that question to Biden 3, 4, maybe 5 times. And Biden just avoided it, kept laughing it off, wasn't necessary. The doctor that told him he had a cold, he thought he was okay, just needed some rest. Well, listen, I'm not a doctor. And I could be, and hopefully am, wrong about all this. But, like you, I do have eyes. They don't lie. I, like nearly every one of you, had, or currently has, 4 grandparents and 2 parents. Every one of us. 4 grandparents, 2 parents. Some of you even have more, with wonderful step-parents and step-grandparents. And if you yourself, just you, yourself, are over the age of 40, your eyes have seen all this too. The slow decline of your elders, followed by a sudden incident or event, and then without warning, your loved one is confused, not sure where he or she is at, can't find the keys, can't find the rest of the thought she just had in her head, or has the ability to even end the sentence that he was in the middle of. It's all quite normal, actually, and it's to be expected. It's called getting older. And it will visit all of us one day. It won't feel good. It won't look pretty. But more than likely, that feeble, humbling moment we're all going to experience will not be televised live to an audience of 2 billion people around the world, with Jake Tapper's hot breath breathing down your neck and telling you, ironically, that your time is up. Who exactly is Jake Tapper, you might ask yourself at 81? It won't matter. Because at that point, when you suddenly blurt out that there are 1,000 trillionaires in America, and you've spent your presidency trying to make those trillionaires, corrected later to billionaires, what have you been doing to them? You've been trying to make them pay their friggin' taxes. They don't like you. And now you realize these rich-ass barbarians are at your gate. And at that point then, nothing will really matter. I'm sorry, my friends. But if I have to be the only one to stand for Joe Biden, that's right, that's me. You heard me say that. If I have to be the only one to stand up for Joe Biden here, to protect him from the cruelest form of elder abuse I've ever been forced to watch, well, then that's what I'll do. He was in epic distress that Thursday night. Every cognitive default in his mind seemed to be shutting down. If this had been somebody that you truly cared about, loved, embraced, what would you have done? Would you have seriously even let him go out on that stage? Who would send an 81-year-old out onto any stage to debate a living monster at 9 o'clock at night for a brawl that would not end until 10:42 p.m.? Honestly, have any one of you ever looked at the clock, saw that it was getting near 11 p.m., and said to yourself, I think I'm going to give Grams and Gramps a call? You never did that because it would be cruel. They're not up. You're not going to wake them up. The only people who would think of forcing an elder to perform at that hour of the night would be the same people who would insist on 6 straight days of nonstop debate prep. Hours and hours each day of standing and talking until you were hoarse and exhausted. Trump was right. I know, there's the words I've never spoken. Trump was right when he turned to Biden to ask him what his problem was as to why he never fires anybody. It's amazing to me how a week later now, anyone on this campaign staff still has a job. How is that possible? After running this tired and grieving father into the ground. A man who had just recently watched his only remaining son being convicted as a felon for the outrageous crime of needing help, for being an addict. Who would put this old man through a brutal boot camp, make him memorize 200 facts and stats, and then pick the wrong podium without once going on the stage the day before to check the lighting, the sight lines, and where the bully would be standing? Lying, a smug TV star who knew what the red light on the camera meant, who knew timing and how to wait and when to pounce and devour his prey. All while speaking, this was Trump, all while speaking in his softest, most fake and pathetic voice, speaking his most honest statement of the night. This is what he said right after Biden got lost, forgot what he was going to say, and then mumbled something. Trump, quote, he says to the moderators, I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. And I don't think he knows what he said either. Wow. Biden was not well. Biden did not possess the faculties he needed. Something was wrong. Did nobody see this in the days leading up to the collapse? Did not a single person raise their voice to ask, maybe we shouldn't do this to him? But they did do it to him. And the repercussions that we, the world, and the generations after us will have to suffer through are not even part of the current discussion this week. It's all about making sure he stays in the race, and nothing about the risk to his own life he is facing as they push him to soldier onward. So I will say this to protect him from an out-of-control party machine that is in a panic over what to do. For any of us to be silent now is exactly what the term elder abuse is meant to describe. Leave Mr. Biden alone. Let him rest. Let him go home. He has done his job. Let him have his dignity. Please do him this favor. Tell the press that President Biden has asked to have an independent team of doctors do a full medical evaluation of his mental and physical health. When they are through, they, along with the president, will then announce the full results to the public and give their honest assessment. And that assessment may be this: for the good of his well-being, he must stop work. He must step down. The next day, President Biden then will give his final remarks in a short and beautiful statement on the south lawn of the White House. The place will be packed with thousands of grateful everyday Americans, fry cooks and teachers, bricklayers and nurses, gay teens and the vets, the homeless, the union members, and the elder care workers, all of whom know what he is doing is for the good of the country that he loves so dearly. He once saved the world from a man named Trump. And now, in one last selfless act, he is stepping aside to ensure this Trump will be banished for good. Millions, upon hearing him speak, while he wipes the tears from his eyes, will weep too. Biden will never be forgotten. A profile in courage. The founders of this country were smart in many ways. They knew there would be presidents who would not make it through even a 4-year term. So they set up a position called vice president, just for that reason. It's amazing, actually, to think that we've only had 46 presidents in the life of this country, and that 9 of them, that's about 20%, have never made it to the end of their term. 4 were assassinated, 1 resigned, 4 more died of various illnesses. Each time, though, there was a smooth and peaceful transition, with the vice president being sworn in as the new president. Contrary to what it may feel like right now, this is not an unusual moment we are in this week. This happens. There's precedent. And if President Biden is unable to perform his duties, there is a tried and true solution. He resigns due to the obvious medical issues that were on full display the night of June 27th. His vice president, Kamala Harris, is sworn in as president. By federal campaign rules, she and only she inherits all the campaign funds in the Biden-Harris war chest. Biden will urge all his Biden-Harris convention delegates to support her. She will now immediately become the incumbent president, who will run on the incredible accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration. There will be no real convention fight, and nearly every American who had planned to vote for Biden will vote for Harris, as recent polling has actually shown us. Many Biden voters have already stated that they'd vote for a dead cat or a ficus plant instead of Trump. They're not switching to Trump. Some have even said that they would go all out weekend at Bernie's and vote for a dead Biden if that meant keeping Trump out of the White House. One possible bonus in all this will be that a record number of votes from women for Harris will make up for some of Biden's loss of the youth vote and the Arab American vote. And there's this. For over 8 months, it has been reported that Kamala Harris has quietly pushed for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It seems to me that there's one good thing that is possible from this mess we're in. Less Palestinians will die with Kamala Harris in the Oval Office. And this. Someday we will look back and see that we grew and got better as a country and finally finished the job of having a full, equal, and complete democracy. Our first female president, it turned out, ended up playing a big role in making that happen. Another gift from Joe Biden, picking her, knowing she was the right one when, during their own debate on a stage back in 2020, she gently but caustically reminded him that as a senator many years prior in Washington, D.C., he once stood in the way of she and her sister going to an integrated school in Berkeley, California. That was his position at the time. When she confronted him with this, you could see, in that moment, the sadness and shame on Joe Biden's face. He knew right from wrong. And in 2020, he knew, even if most of his supporters weren't sure about her as his VP pick, and even if her platform was essentially Bernie's, he knew she was the one, and the first of what would turn out to be many women and people of color who would lead us to our better selves. I'm okay with that. Aren't you? Let's find the courage to fix this. After all, this weekend, it's our 248th birthday. Now, that's old. What will happen? Either way, we're not going to let Trump back in the White House. We're going to have to make a fairly quick decision. This can't go on now for days or weeks. If Harris is going to be the candidate, or whoever the candidate is, including if it's Joe Biden, the election is, it's less than a couple days, less than 4 months from right now, today. Wow. So you get it, right? You can't mess around. The candidate has to have 4 months, 4 full months to get out there. And all of us have to do whatever we can do to prevent a second term of Donald J. Trump. So stay tuned. We'll be on top of this. over the next few days, this week. Not for long, though. We need a decision. I'll do my part. Thank you for caring and doing what you need to do, whatever that is, to protect our democracy. My thanks to all of you for tuning in. This is Michael Moore. This is it, folks. Here we go.